Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, ranking the position groups for this Auburn program heading into 2024. And before we even get to stacking these position groups, just want to give one takeaway from doing this practice, and that is where Hugh Freeze has this roster from a talent standpoint in comparison to the last year under Brian Harsin. And I think a lot of Auburn fans understand that to compete at the highest level of the SEC, yes, you need player development, you need culture, but just to get your foot in the door of competing at the upper echelon of this conference, you got to have your ducks in a row in terms of talent acquisition. Brian Harsin, it was kind of, for lack of better terms, an embarrassment in terms of what he was doing on the talent acquisition side of things for this Auburn program. Hugh Freeze has come in. He's recruited the high school ranks exceptionally well. He's used the transfer portal exceptionally well over 2 off seasons. Hugh Freeze has completely turned around this program from a talent standpoint. And I think what excites me the most about this Auburn program, and I've said this a lot over the last couple of months, if you were to ask me what programs I would be buying stock in for the next 5 years, Auburn would be at the top of the list because I think they're going to even get better in 2025 and in 2026. But this team in 2024, you make no mistake about it, is much more talented than what you saw in 2023. Fired up to get into these position groups. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys, to the Auburn fans. It's been no secret. This is a program since Hugh Freeze has taken over. I've had just an absolute blast talking with you guys. The amount of support you guys show, I can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And much more importantly, I have what might be some hot takes. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments section as well in terms of how you evaluate these position groups. I think it's a fascinating conversation that kind of involves a little bit of a projection in certain position groups. And let's start off with a position group that in 2023 I was kind of banging the table for as just one of the worst position groups, not only on this Auburn program, but really in the SEC. It was the pass catchers. It just was not good enough in 2023. You take a look at this unit heading into 2024, I would say, name me a position group across the country that gets better than this Auburn wide receiver. The amount of improvements that you're going to see, it's going to be night and day. Let's start off with the young talent in this Auburn wide receiver room, obviously headlined by 5-star wide receiver Cam Coleman, where, yeah, sure, there's some projection that needs to take place. We are talking about a kid that hasn't played a snap of college football in his career. I'm very comfortable. I'm sure a lot of Auburn fans are very comfortable making that projection that Cam Coleman's not only going to be, I think, the best wide receiver on this roster, quite frankly, could come in and be one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. Auburn has a true wide receiver one, which is something they just didn't have in 2023. You look back at some of the numbers. Rivaldo Fairweather was the quote-unquote wide receiver one for this Auburn offense in 2023. Rivaldo Fairweather is a phenomenal football player. That being said, when your passing attack is going through your tight end, that kind of says something about what your wide receiver room looks like. Cam Coleman coming in to be that wide receiver one, absolutely massive. You sprinkle in Perry Thompson. You sprinkle in Malcolm Simmons and Bryce Kane. The amount of young talent in this wide receiver room, it's certainly there. And then you take a look at, what they did in the transfer portal. Keandre Lambert-Smith very well could be a wide receiver one in this Auburn offense as well. Was the wide receiver one in Penn State's offense the last 2 years. An experienced wide receiver that's good at a lot of different things that you can use in a lot of different ways. This is exactly what Auburn needed. You look at this wide receiver room, it was going to be a reliant on a lot of young talent. You bring in Keandre Lambert-Smith after spring practice and say, you have some veteran guys. You could throw Robert Lewis into that conversation that we feel really good about from a proven commodity standpoint. And then you sprinkle in some just high upside guys like Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson. Obviously, you throw in Rivaldo Fairweather at the tight end spot. I like at this Auburn pass catcher room and say, it's probably the best position group on this team heading into 2024. If there's one reason to believe in Auburn taking a massive jump in 2024, it really does have to deal with this passing attack, specifically the pass catchers in this Auburn offense. Going into our number 2 position group, let's talk about the running back room. Obviously headlined by Jarquez Hunter, a guy that just not enough people are talking about as being one of the better running backs in the SEC. Then you sprinkle in a guy like Damari Alston, who we saw some really good things about. Jeremiah Cobb, I think, is going to be the running back 2 in this offense. When you take a look at Jeremiah Cobb, we knew it would take a year to put on some weight and kind of get to that SEC running back level of physicality. We all know what he can do on the track and field, sub 11 seconds in the 100-meter. Having a full another offseason to kind of get that SEC running back frame on Jeremiah Cobb, I think he's ready for a breakout year. Obviously, thoughts and prayers to Brian Battie, who's dealing with the offseason incident that we saw. This running back room, I think, is a very, very good room for Auburn heading into the 2024 year. Number 3 in a sneaky position group for Auburn, and this might be one of the hot takes that I have. It's the offensive line. And I think what's so fascinating about the offensive line is you bring in Percy Lewis, who I am exceptionally high on heading into 2024. Started the last 7 games for Mississippi State, over 235 pass per opportunities, only 4 quarterback hurries and 2 sacks. Played phenomenal at the left tackle spot for Mississippi State in the SEC. But what I think is so intriguing about this move is you're bringing a left tackle that we think is one of the better left tackles in the conference that also gives you the ability to kick Dylan Wade down to the left guard spot. I think Dylan Wade was a really good tackle for Auburn in 2023. That being said, Dylan Wade's best position is going to be on the inside of the offensive line. So I think you upgrade the left tackle spot, but by kicking Dylan Wade down to left guard, you upgrade the guard spot as well. Connor Lew, I think, is going to be one of the better centers that you see not only in the SEC, but in the country. Then you look at Jeremiah Wright and Xavier Miller and say, hey, 2 experienced guys that we kind of know what they bring to the table, hopefully see some progression from both of those players heading into 2024. This offensive line is sneaky, pretty dang solid for this Auburn program. Going to number 4, let's look at the defensive line. And this is a unit that I think is fascinating because we have them at number 4 right now. This is kind of where that projection kind of takes place. This defensive line could be really, really good for Auburn in 2024, depending on some of the young talent really breaking out. And there's some reason to believe that that young talent kind of breaks out. You start with a guy like Keldrick Falk going into year 2. You kind of know that he's going to take a massive step from his freshman year to his sophomore year. Was really good as a freshman, going to be even better as a sophomore. You look at a guy like Jalen McLeod, who, yes, on paper is a senior, but this is only going to be his 2nd season in the SEC, was largely one of the better pure pass rushers in the conference last year. I mean, his get off, his ability to attack tackles from an athletic standpoint, it's special. I really do like what the edge rusher unit looks like for Auburn. You sprinkle in Amaris Williams. The Auburn fans who listen to our recruiting stuff know that there's not many true freshmen that I'm higher on heading into 2024 than Amaris Williams. You sprinkle in Jamonta Waller. This edge rusher position could be really good for Auburn. And then Hugh Freeze does a phenomenal job in the transfer portal addressing the depth of the inside of the defensive line. Now, I don't think you necessarily have a game wrecker on the inside. You see Trill Carter, you see Gage Keys, you bring in Isaiah Rakes and Philip Bleedy. Those are 4 very experienced interior defensive linemen that, again, are probably none of them are going to be top 100 picks in the NFL draft, although I think Philip Bleedy probably has the highest upside. There were so many teams that were just purely desperate looking for depth on the inside of the defensive line. Auburn was one of those teams. They brought in 4 experienced interior defensive linemen that make you feel pretty good about where Auburn is from an interior defensive line standpoint. And if you get some breakout performances by a guy like Keldrick Falk or by a guy like Amaris Williams or Jamonta Waller, this defensive line could be sneaky, really, really good in the 2024 year. Going to the number 5 position group, let's talk about the linebacker room, where when I began stacking these position groups, I should say, I thought I'd have the linebacker room a lot higher than number 5, but I think that just kind of tells you what Auburn has done with this roster, I guess, from a talent acquisition standpoint. I mean, Eugene Asante, Austin Keys, that's a very solid linebacker room, and it comes in as number 5. Again, I think it speaks to the talent on this Auburn roster. You look at Eugene Asante, you want to see a little bit more consistency from Eugene Asante. The highs of Eugene Asante is some of the better linebacker play that you see in the SEC. Can he put it together every single Saturday on a more consistent basis? That's probably the question. You have a guy like Austin Keys, who both Eugene Asante and Austin Keys can get after the passer at a high level. DJ Durkin, Charles Kelly are going to look to use these backers as pass rushers. I really like the fit in terms of what Auburn wants to do on defense. You have some young talent in DJ Barber and DeMarcus Riddick, who are coveted linebackers that could be guys that you can rely on as well in the 2024 year. I like where this linebacker room is sitting heading into 2024. Number 6, the secondary, is probably the position group that we have the most amount of question marks, just purely because you lost a lot of really, really good football players to the NFL draft. But you start digging into it and say, all right, Kayin Lee, Keontae Scott, we feel pretty dang comfortable with what they can do at the boundary cornerback spot. You bring in a guy like Jaron Thompson, who was such a massive addition, because you look at the biggest question mark we have for Auburn in the secondary was just experience. Jaron Thompson is one of the most experienced safeties that you see in the country. And so injecting Jaron Thompson into the secondary with a talented group, but a relatively inexperienced group, I think was absolutely massive. I don't think this secondary takes as much of a step back as a lot of people will assume when they look at the paper and look at how much NFL draft talent left from 2023. That being said, we still have some questions. So we have them in at number 6. In the last position group, we got to talk about the quarterback room, which from a pure quarterback room standpoint, you kind of feel decent about, right? Peyton Thorne, Hank Brown, you bring in Walker White as a true freshman. There is some talented young arms in this quarterback room. You look at Peyton Thorne, and the Auburn fans have heard me say this. Peyton Thorne's a quarterback that you need to surround him with talent. He's not a quarterback that is going to put the team on the back and go win a Heisman Trophy and win 10 games for this program. He needs talent around him. That being said, when you put talent around him, Peyton Thorne has shown that he can be a quarterback that wins you a lot of football games. You go back to the Michigan State year in 2021 where he had Jaden Reed and he had Keon Coleman. Peyton Thorne won 10 football games. Michigan State was one of the better teams in the country. Now, Peyton Thorne had the talent around him to be able to operate his offense. I look to 2024 and say, I think he has the talent around him to take a massive step in the right direction in 2024. Being in this program for a full spring practice, that's going to be massive as well. I think a lot of people forget Peyton Thorne came in post-spring for Auburn. It was a new coaching staff with a new offense, with a massive amount of new players on the offensive side of the football. It kind of made sense why this Auburn offense did not really find its stride. And on top of that, you have Hugh Freeze coming in, going to have a little bit heavier of a hand in terms of what this offense looks like, which is massive. You talk about the 2 reasons Auburn brings in Hugh Freeze: 1, talent acquisition; 2, he's one of the best offensive minds that you see in college football. So Peyton Thorne having better talent around him, having a full year in this program, and then having Hugh Freeze be a little bit more hands-on with this offense, that could mean massive things with Peyton Thorne. At the very least, he's going to be better than he was in 2023, excuse me. The question is, how much better does he get in 2024? And I think that is the question that a lot of Auburn fans have. He's going to be better. How much better is the question? If he takes a massive step, this is a team that's going to be dangerous in the SEC. And again, this team's going to be better in 2024, 2025, 2026. That's what you're fired up about for this Auburn program. We'll cut it there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.